Throughout the years, countries around the world have been adopting a democratic government, each with their own style and characteristics. With so many factors to consider in all these countries, how can democracy be measured? The Economist Intelligence Unit is a research and analysis division of the Economist Group, the sister company to the Economist newspaper. They provide, on a yearly basis, the Democracy Index. The report provides a snapshot of the state of world democracy for 165 independent states and 2 territories. The Democracy Index is based on 5 categories: electoral process and pluralism, civil liberties, the functioning of government, political participation, and political culture. Based on their scores on 60 indicators within these categories, each country is then itself classified as one of 4 types of regime: full democracy, flawed democracy, hybrid regime, or authoritarian regime. In last year's report, countries like Norway and Iceland topped the democracy ranking, whereas North Korea and Republic Democratic of Congo were the lowest. Also, from the 167 analyzed countries, only 23 were considered full democracies.
Advantages of living in a democracy are shown within society. This type of government has free speech, culturally, politically, and economically. Let you be part of a community in which people can gain certain rights, giving them a feeling of inclusion. These people have a right to choose their ruler apart from political parties, etc. This way of living requires a highly educated society, calling for a government to invest in education and make it accessible to everyone.
Contrasting with a country in which democracy is not practiced, Belarus. Among nearly all undemocratic countries, freedom of expression is severely restricted for both journalists and civilians. In Belarus, journalists are routinely intimidated if they report on information the government dislikes, many of them dying under suspicious circumstances, and civilians face significant punishment if they express views contrary to the regime's goals and narratives. Religious freedom is limited or non-existent in authoritarian nations, often with a single faith being the only one seen as legitimate by the government. For Belarus, although the constitution proclaims freedom of religious practice, functionally only the Belarusian Orthodox Church enjoys legitimization, while other minor faiths contend with harassment and possible incarceration. Authorities are free to abuse their positions with impunity. Since civilians lack the systemic power to create a meaningful political opposition, their leaders feel free to take advantage of their influence either passively or in direct acts of violence. In Belarus, widespread criticism of human rights abuses led to the liquidation of over 200 human rights organizations within the country, effectively legitimizing abuse within the system's framework. Why Finland represents an ideal democracy. 3 advantages. Ethnic, religious, and linguistic minorities in Finland, although also often subject to human rights abuses, have greater support and say compared to most countries by both governmental and private institutions. New projects working to empower underprivileged peoples and enacting social justice are constantly being created. Adding on to greater power granted to traditionally dispowered groups, the Finnish government itself has held areas pertaining to women's rights, the rights of persons with disabilities, the rights of sexual and gender minorities, indigenous peoples' rights, social and cultural rights as some of the most important issues being tackled presently by the institutions in place. Democratic participation and freedom of expression are all guaranteed and practiced in Finland. All Finnish citizens are allowed to participate in their country's systems and can hold government officials accountable to a greater degree than most other countries.